All right, we'd like to welcome everyone this evening to Mapleton City Council meeting on Wednesday, January 18th, 2023. Everyone is present. We will begin with an invocation by Councilman Garrett and led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Egbert.
Our Father in heaven, we bow before you this evening. We are thankful for the many blessings that we enjoy. We're thankful for the moisture that thou hast provided for the earth. We're grateful for the water that it will help supplement our aquifers. We're grateful for this community and the chance that we have to be citizens and neighbors within Mapleton, to be able to enjoy each other's company and to rub shoulders with such great people. We're thankful for the city and for all who volunteer and work and dedicate their time to helping make this community so much better. We pray for those who may be struggling and who are going through trials. We pray for them, that thou will comfort them and bless them. Help us to know how we can reach out and help them as well. We pray for thy guidance tonight in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Start me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will, on our consent agenda is only one item, approval of the City Council meeting minutes of January 4th, 2023.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Jones and a second by Councilman Carlson.
Carlson, yes.
Egbert, yes.
Beck, yes.
Jones, yes.
Garrett, yes.
Great. Item number 2 is consideration of an ordinance of amendments to the Mapleton City Code, section 18.84.380 regarding home occupation standards. Mr. Conroy.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Camille, can you advance that? This isn't forwarding it. Just one more, yeah. So the city's home occupation standards are intended to allow for a modest level of business activity in residential homes. It's really meant to be for really small scale businesses that have little to no impact on the residential neighborhood. Some examples of home occupations that we've approved over the years include salons and just general office. There are some preschools and daycares, things like that. What we're proposing is just to make some amendments to, one, improve the process, make it a little easier for the businesses that have little to no impact, and then also to address some of the uses that have been somewhat problematic in the past. And so that's what we've proposed here, is to try to streamline the process and then make it clearer on those that have potential impacts. We've outlined the code sections that we're proposing for amendments in the staff report. Probably the best is if you have questions, we can just go over those individually. Otherwise, staff would just recommend adoption of the proposed amendments.
Just, I guess, a question in regards to this. If somebody was to start doing rentals, short-term rentals with their house, does it fall under this, or does it fall under something else?
We'll adopt a separate short-term rental ordinance.
Just wanted to make sure that was the case. So should that be specified in here that it does not cover that?
It doesn't need to, but if you wanted it to, we could include it. No, that would just fall under the standard zoning laws. So, but that's something we'll address probably at our upcoming retreat on which direction we want to go, and then get something firm on the books one way or the other.
John, requirements regarding, fire safety, those types of things, that's covered under the building permit provisions, correct?
So the home occupation includes a background check by the police department and a fire inspection. So fire goes and covers that.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion to approve the,
Hold on.
oh, sorry. Nope.
This is
I
a
don't.
public hearing item, so we'll open it up for public comment. Seeing there are none, we'll close the public hearing portion.
I make a motion to adopt the ordinance, the amendments to the ordinance number section 18 .84.380 regarding home occupation standards.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilmember Jones and a second by Councilman Beck.
Egbert, yes.
Beck, yes.
Jones, yes.
Garrett, yes.
Carlson, yes.
Great, thanks, Sean. We'll move forward with our last item, which is an action item, consideration of a resolution to approve the proposed task order for Hanson, Allen, Luce to produce a comprehensive drinking water and pressurized irrigation plan. Mr. Hunter.
As you can see in the...
Rob, turn your mic on.
Oh, there we go. There's the green light. Thank you, Mayor, and members of the council. Attached to the staff report was the proposal from Hanson Allen Luce to do the comprehensive water master plan. So this is, if you looked at what they had provided, they showed everything that they've been doing for the city. They've been our water consultant for a while now. Been doing quite a bit for the city. That includes, I think in December 2021, they did the update to the water source protection plan. And then just in October, we had our water rights master plan. So that is specifying where it is that we plan to continue to get the additional water rights that we need to continue to provide both pressurized irrigation and culinary water to the residents as we continue to grow. And this one is basically the distribution system for both the culinary water and the pressurized irrigation system. So this is updating their modeling, which they've been doing, working on the existing, and we use that. The developments have to go through and see what effect their proposed developments will have on the system, make sure that everything's sized correctly to deliver the water to them. This will take that model, go towards the projections, and with those projections and the needs of the model, we'll determine kind of update from what was done 5 years ago, seeing how things are sized, how things have grown, as opposed to how we projected they would grow over the last 5 years, update everything, see what we need in the future, set a priority for our capital facilities plan for water and pressurized irrigation, and produce that in a report so that we have kind of our next at least 5 years of, projected out into the future, but it really sets the next 5 years of capital facilities. So we are recommending that we hire them, that we approve this task order for them.
Is this one of the steps that needs to happen for us to start making connections to the canal for pressurized irrigation? Or?
So actually, we're that project that I think y'all authorized in also October is moving forward. So those connections are going to be made. We just need to get there's an agreement that has to be signed with the Bureau of Reclamation. They actually sent a draft over. Needed a couple of small corrections to send back to them, but as soon as we get that, then our contractor is already on board to make those connections in March. But this is really, like I said, setting the stage and making sure that we have the right plan in place for, like I said, for the overall future, but really the important part is to set at least the next 5 years worth of projects and say these are the priorities of what we need over the next 5 years.
What had we budgeted for this?
I don't know what, to be honest with you, what Stephen had previously assumed would be budgeted towards this. But I can tell you, I've never done a combined pressurized irrigation and water system for a city our particular size. But just in my experience as a consultant and working for a municipality for the last 5.5 years, this is in line with what I would expect. So,
The budget, I think, has 100,000 in it now that was budgeted when you adopted your budget, so it would be, we would use that plus the additional and to cover that.
Is there anything we need to address with potential overage with a motion, adding have a maximum of X? So it can
Or
be
is this a
efficient.
fixed bid?
It says it's estimate in here, so there could be additional fees,
Yeah, you could do a not to exceed amount as part of your motion for sure,
just to make life
plus
easier.
10% or something as a contingency.
Just based on what we did a few years ago, it seems like it wouldn't take a lot to update it, but maybe, do they start from scratch again? How does the, how does the procedure work? Because this is a little bit more than I thought it might be, just to update what we did, because we already spent quite a bit of money on it. Do you start from, maybe, do they start from scratch?
Do you want to have,
Maybe
Katie, you
could
want to come
answer
up and address
a
the,
bit about
So
how
we'll let Katie
you
tell
go
us.
about this?
This one, okay. I worked for RB&G.
if you'll state your
Oh,
name, that'd be
okay.
great.
I'm Katie Jacobson. I work for Hanson, Allen and Luce. I worked for RB&G from 2006 to 2018. So RB&G was your previous consultant that did the previous master plan. So I completed a large amount of that work. And Hanson, Allen and Luce acquired the models from RB&G. And so we were able to attain that data from RB&G. But then the models were rebuilt on a geographic information systems basis. So your city uses GIS to track every water pipe, hydrant, and so on in the city. And so we rebuilt the models from scratch using that data. So we do have that going forward. That's really the only thing from the previous consultant. But even if Hanson, Allen, Luce had been the previous consultant, we do essentially start from scratch each time. And so the proposal goes over all of the tasks. There's pages and pages of here of tasks that are, action items that we'll take. So we start with your existing water usage over the last 3 years, and the state has significantly changed how they set their requirements. So that will be an entirely new process that the city hasn't been through before. Look at your usage over the past 3 years, evaluate it, see what it should be going forward. Then we work with Sean's office to incorporate land planning. We will not be doing any land planning. We will incorporate what your community development department is doing with land planning. We will evaluate the existing system in the model. Using those models we've built, evaluate what existing issues there are in the city with fire flow or storage or well capacity, for example. We will update the model calibration in the summer to make sure that when we're in the summer that the model is matching what we expect it to be at. Then we will go out into the future. We'll do a 10-year scenario that helps us set projects that are eligible for impact fees. And then we'll do a build-out scenario or whatever point we agree on with the planning department where we should end the model, whether that's for a certain planning year or whether it's what the city considers to be full build-out based on your existing zoning. And so that's the major task of the plan, is to evaluate that build-out scenario and what projects you would need from now into the future. So all of these things, we will utilize our previous knowledge and the knowledge from the city in the past, but it's essentially starting from scratch every time that this is updated. So much happens even in 5 years that even if you have the previous information, the models usually come along. We keep the models updated, and so the models we can pull along. But other than that, the rest of the process is usually starting from scratch. So. We evaluate, like we said, transmission, so all of the pipes in the city, the wells, the water supply, the pressurized irrigation connections, the PI pond, booster stations and so on. Prepare the capital facilities plan, so listing out all those projects as Rob mentioned and prioritizing them, putting cost estimates to them. And then the final task is to have a comprehensive report that brings all this together in one. And we've also listed about 8 other reports that we have done with Hanson, Allen and Luce, or the RB&G has done, or that current consultants are doing. And so the results of those will also be brought into this plan so that it's one document that the engineering and planning department can turn to and have all those results at their fingertips, rather than losing the information from past plans. So.
A big part of what we did before too was the water quality. But if you look at the tasks that we're doing this time, evaluate existing system requirements, now the whole system changes, because before we were talking about capacity with the pumps and getting the water into the pond. And now, we begged for these connections in the canal now for 4 or 5 years, and finally they're going to give them to us. That changes the distribution of the water, which then changes the pressure, changes all the PRVs that we may have to put in and everything else to monitor that. And then every one of these changes with the future demand projections and model scenarios, well, that changes the model completely. You got to evaluate the existing system performance. It's a new system now.
Yeah. So
the performance can be different. And then you got the capital facilities plan, which we have now. When we did this quality drinking, I'm saying that backwards. drinking quality study before, we had to do it right away because we were lacking in that to figure out where we were at, to figure out what we could move forward on. And we got some of that stuff done. Some of those projects we completed in the last 4 or 5 years, about $2 million worth. And then now, but now the priorities change because of our connections, and we don't have to have the pumps and install those new pumps now.
Yeah.
We have a spot for them for future if we're going to need them by the time we get to 29,000 people, but for now we won't.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So there's kind of two big things that I think are gonna change. One of them that's gonna be ongoing every 5 years. We're gonna have to reevaluate that adds some complexity into the system that some other municipalities don't have. Because we have pressurized irrigation and we're still in the process of getting all of our rights, that, you know, whatever happens in the next 5 years, right, and what happened in the last 5 years of what rights we were able to obtain for pressurized irrigation is going to kind of change how much priority or what projects we need to do for pressurized irrigation versus what we need to do for culinary water until, you know, those additional rights came in. And so we've got to update that every time based off of what actually happened over the previous 5 years.
But as long as, I think, Reed, as long as we don't have any major changes like we've done the last, what's come up now, then it should be a little bit easier for these guys to put it together.
Right.
If we're, you know, don't have any of those dramatic changes, so.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess there's nothing, this is kind of separate, but the Ensign Bickford well that's being filtered right now that we can't use anywhere, can that be factored in, or is there a timeline on that, or how does that sit? Does anybody know?
Should I speak to that?
Sure.
If you know about it, yes.
So
please.
the well number 1 that's at Main Street and Maple Street, right in the center of the city, that is currently being used in your pressurized irrigation system.
Correct.
So that's being filtered through the GAC, the Granulated Activated Carbon Facility. It goes into the city's PI system. And then once Ensign Bickford is finished with their state mandated process, that well will revert to city ownership. And so we will be considering how that could be used.
And that could be done probably within the next 5 years.
Okay,
I would assume. Is that
I would
kind of what
hope
I'm
so.
hearing?
It
Yeah.
seems like they've stopped the continuous pumping that they were mandated to do, but I haven't kept up on what their test results are showing or what the new
That's kind of what
rules are.
I've been
Yeah,
hearing, but.
Yeah, and based on engineering standards, we would consider that clean enough for drinking water. There'd probably be a large public perception issue with that, and so we would, at this point, would assume it would stay in the PI system. But yeah, that would be one of the things that we would consider.
It'll be looked at for sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah, and there's the Orton well is about 200, up to 200 gallons per minute. That's another one that Hal Yowsey is running with Ensign Bickford. So all of those would be considered. Another major thing that has changed is Steve Jones from our office works with pretty much every municipality in Utah County. So he's very familiar with Central Utah's system. And he identified that there's an opportunity to take high-pressure water that's high enough to get to the highest parts of the proposed Harmony Ridge development and take that water at high pressure from Central Utah versus pumping it up. And so just in December, we've got them on board with that project to bring a very high-pressure line into the city for the south part of your city. And so that has not ever been contemplated before. And so that will be a big change, like Dallas was describing, with Mayor Hakes was describing, with how the system will change once we incorporate that instead of the previous plan, so.
That's good, that's good.
Any other questions for Katie? Thanks for the info.
I thought,
Katie. Go ahead, Casey.
I thought I thought one of the wells had too much iron or manganese.
Yeah, the
And I can-
Crowd Canyon well.
Okay, will that be part of this comprehensive plan?
Yeah.
To treat
Yeah,
that?
Stephen Lord had intended to do, and I'm not sure if this is in the budget yet, but a dedicated line to take that well water directly into the Crowd Canyon tank. And then that iron can be precipitated out, so it will fall out and won't get into the customer's drinking water. And so we'll consider that and, you know, see if that would be the best use of that water, or the best plan for that. And of course, I understand budgets, but maybe another way to look at it is from the value. Right now, water pipe projects are running about $300 a foot. And so if you have a 500-foot-long project that we're able to eliminate or change the size on, reduce the size, then the value of the master plan has paid for itself in doing that.
That's right.
I guess relative to the Crowd Canyon, it seems like we did a connection across so that since the last time, so I assume that'll be a part of it too, so we know what the impact that can have on us, which should make some big improvements.
Yes, yeah, so your Maple Canyon is connected to Crowd Canyon via the bench
Which wasn't.
water line, yes.
Which wasn't a few years ago.
Yeah, yeah. And as I think you've probably understood, there's a spring rehabilitation program project happening right now. So if that pans out the way that we hope it will and that Horrocks is working toward, that will produce a lot of water up high in your canyon. You won't have to be pumping from the valley wells up to the canyon. And so that was another thing that in the previous master plan, those springs were reliable only up to 50 gallons per minute. And so we hope that there's a huge difference within the next year when that project's completed, so.
We hope to save a lot of power in pumping.
Yes.
All right. Any
I
other
just
questions?
have a quick procedural question. Does this item not require us to get multiple bids from different vendors?
I believe Steve had the quotes, right?
I'm not sure on that one, and I'd have to do a little more research.
But the main issue for us was because they've got all the expertise that it was
Well, yeah,
just.
it's clear the value and the reasoning,
Right.
but I just want to make sure make sure we didn't get in trouble for not getting other bids. So.
Yeah, I've only been here for a month, so I can't speak to if the city has some other requirement on top of what the usual is, but usually it's for engineering consultation, is you pick the most qualified and then work towards a cost that both sides can live with. It is construction that is required to be a low bid.
Okay.
Yes, but I had this conversation with Steven, and I'm trying to remember. In my mind, I can see other prices, whether they sent him some kind of quote. And I can't recall exactly who it is.
He
I
had
just
told
couldn't
me
recall the
that he
result.
may be required to get other bids, and so that he would reach out to other firms he was aware of.
Yeah.
And list off, okay, here's the things that we want in the plan, how much would it be for you to do those? And so I was never party to whether he actually did that, but that was contemplated.
Yeah, we'd have to dig into that. If you'd like us to, we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
I-
should, because I
Okay.
had the discussion with him, and in my mind, I've seen pricing from two others, but we'll pull that up.
Yeah, the main issue is, as you
I would,
mentioned, was
yeah, I would
the
just say,
construction.
I would just say if we approve this, we'll make sure it's contingent upon double checking and making sure that we don't get in trouble for not having those bids.
Okay.
Well, couldn't we make a decision though regardless?
Yeah.
Because of, we all agree that this is where it is regardless, so couldn't we?
Contingent upon the appropriate procedures were followed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the proposed task order for Hanson Allen
Thanks,
Luce to produce a comprehensive drinking water and pressurized irrigation plan not to exceed 10% over the amount of $161,883,000 and contingent upon the appropriate procedures were followed to obtain bids.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Egbert and a second by Councilmember Jones.
Beck, yes.
Jones, yes.
Garrett, yes.
Carlson, yes.
Egbert, yes.
Great. Katie, thank you for being here. Great information. All right, we'll go to administrative reports. Let's start with Chief.
All right, thanks, Mayor, members of the council. So let's talk emergency management tonight. So a couple topics with emergency management, emergency preparedness. So you'll remember in the fall last year, we proposed starting I get twisted on this, a Public Safety Community Preparedness Committee. That's close, committee.
Can
That
we come up
committee,
with an acronym for that?
yeah, we gotta find
You
something.
don't have to say public safety, it's just part of your department.
Okay, got it.
Community preparedness.
So without public safety, what's it called?
I forgot already, I got it.
Community preparedness.
Now you got to start over and do the whole thing.
Community
again.
Preparedness Committee.
CPC.
Okay, gotcha. Had our first meeting last November. That was more of an organizational meeting, and then came together, the first part, about a week ago when we got back from the holiday. It's a 10-member committee. It has members from the CERT team, members from the fire department, I'm representing the police department. Councilmember Egbert represents the council, and then also some at-large citizens that wanted to be on the committee. And it's, so far, I'm pumped about it. It's starting off cool. So one thing that they're going to focus on between now and April is testing and making sure our way of communicating with our residents in an event of emergency is effective. And, you know, we use the Everbridge and we use our newsletters and stuff like that. But in the case of emergency, we need something instant. So Melanie Bott, who is a resident and on our committee, is also helping the Springville Mapleton Chamber with their magazine, and she's going to do a little information there, and then we'll pump some information out through our newsletter, try to get people signed up on that. So that committee is up and rolling, and there's some passion there. Those guys are looking good. Second part is Corey and I, late fall, around October, November, were invited to a meeting down in Spanish Fork with all the cities, and the invitation was from the Utah County Emergency Management Team. And their proposal was trying to help the cities write an emergency management plan that we have control over what we want in the plan, but from their perspective is a little more consistent with every city because they're going to be involved. When our mountain caught on fire, they were here. They were part of it. So every city has bought into that. There's been 2 meetings with that. We had ours in Mapleton yesterday. So we're in the process of rewriting an emergency management plan. The reason I bring that up to you is part of that plan. Theron will know NIMS. NIMS is a federal agency that requires several trainings for us, and one of them is with city leaders, including you guys in city management. So I'm breaking this to you now too, Corey. There is a 4-hour training that they're required to do. They said that takes 2 hours. So I don't know what is easiest for you guys. It's an in-person thing. Maybe I can just work with Corey on that, and we can set a date. They'll come to us and do a little bit of training for city leaders in the event of a big emergency, what our roles and responsibilities are. So that's probably on the horizon sooner than later. We'd like to have this plan knocked out by the fall. So anyway, that's the emergency management stuff. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chief. Logan? Nothing. Madison? All right. Sean?
Just left at your seats just a copy of the previous year's permit activity. We were on schedule for the highest number of homes ever, and then the last couple of months happened and dropped off. But what's interesting, you look at 2021 and 2022 on new homes and building permits, totals were 1 different from year to year. It's pretty crazy. We have seen a slowdown in new homes, but not drastic. We're still seeing some developers and builders who are wanting to continue to push forward. So we'll see what next. I'm pretty certain that we'll see less than this next year, but I don't know that it'll be drastic, but we'll wait and see.
Excellent. Yep. Good, thanks, Sean. Okay, Rob?
Well, my updates basically we kind of went over. So as soon as we get the agreement in place with the Bureau of Reclamation, we will start on the pressurized irrigation connections to the Central Utah line. So it should start within, about a month. It will take about a month to construct. That includes repaving the parking lot there off of South Main, or not repaving, I guess, paving what people have used as a parking area and actually paving it into a parking lot, and making those connections and putting everything back. And then we're in the final stages. We're about 95% plans on the spring rehabilitation project. There's still some things that we need to work through with the Forest Service and some of the restrictions that we've got during different parts of the summer. But we should see that start later this spring. And those are kind of the 2 big projects that we're doing this year. There'll also be road rehab and stuff coming up, but we still need to put together what it is that we're proposing for this next year on that, and I'll come to you with that.
How's the sidewalk on 12th North coming?
So the sidewalk is poured, and the driveway approaches. There's finished work that still needs to be done, stuff cleaned up, and then kind of grading back into the neighbors' yards, and then that strip between the fence and the sidewalk, and paving. Some of that stuff is going to be left until when the weather is warm enough to actually do something good. But so it'll be finished up in April, but the concrete is poured.
So the kids are able to use it right now?
Yeah, I think the last part still needs to be, the cover needs to be taken off because it's cold enough to where it takes about a week, you know, of keeping it covered so it can cure. But, so there, I think there's still a portion that's covered, but, within the next few days, should be open for everybody to walk on.
Great. And Rob, on that one too, we want to make sure that connectivity with that trail is brought back up to standards too.
Right.
So we can talk on that a little bit too.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Rob.
Okay.
Okay, Reed?
Well, this isn't in my area, but my neighbor is, AJ. He mentioned that we've basically been approved as a potential site for a troll. And probably the latter part of February, they'll probably schedule a time to be here on site to meet with people, to look at the potential location that we might have, and give us more information on it, so.
Excellent. Yeah, we had some communication with him today, and he's setting up a time with Corey for Casey and for him to come in and explain it, all the details, and then the staff can work on logistics and all that, and then it can be presented to the council on
Yes.
what the possibilities actually are.
So anyway, that project seems to move along quite well.
Great. Excellent. All right, Jessica?
Well, the legislative session started yesterday, and there's
Enthusiasm.
all the things, guys. This session is pretty intense. Some of the things, we had the locals on the Hill today, and then also the league board meeting met after, and so also the Legislative Policy Committee met too. So it was a whole lot of things. Some of the things that are of concern are, you know, what we've talked about, short-term rentals. There's the two bills to watch for, Musselman's and Benion's. Musselman is kind of just sort of adding definitions. I don't think it's going to be threatening at all. Benion's, I met with her last week, and on the call there were a bunch of short-term rental owners from Brighton and a couple of mayors and other council members, and very diverse opinions. It was very interesting. Benion I have a lot of respect for. She was really open about sending out proposed language and requesting feedback. I have 3 particular areas of concern related to Mapleton. There is a provision for grandfathering of short-term rentals to suggest a city would require 90 days that a illegal short-term rental could have that time period to come into compliance, but it doesn't address a city's right for zoning. So if somebody had an illegal short-term rental in a zone where a short-term rental wasn't allowed, it's unclear that would not be allowed. It also doesn't address, at least in the draft I saw last week, consideration for code compliance and safety. So is it a safe short-term rental? Is it, you know, something we can inspect and pass off? So the intention of the language I clarified was to address those things. So I requested that if they're gonna try and push that, at least put some language. There's a lot of one-size-fits-all in the bill in terms of being overly prescriptive to cities. City of Mapleton is different than Salt Lake in terms of short-term rentals, is different than Park City, and so there's some things that I think are big overreaches. It also, I think I see some unfunded mandates created in there. If they require us to enforce things in certain ways, it requires staffing to enforce, and there's no funding for staff related. So I think that's one to watch. There's a lot about moderate income housing requirements, of course, and cities that are non-compliant, and what penalties it's a stick versus carrot scenario with those cities. They've actually asked the league for suggestions about what the sticks might be, which is pretty fun. There's more about streamlining processes to permit approval, which the league in general is not against. We all, you know, streamlining process is great, but over-prescribing them. One of the ones I saw today was requiring cities to have to turn around applications within 45 days or it's assumed approved. And it gives no consideration for a city that's staffed with 1 to 2 people versus one that's staffed with 40 people in community development, which if you had 5 epic applications show up on the same day, that could create a problem. So again, if the legislature came back and said a city must have a published requirement for review, and that period is whatever the city decides, no issue there, but for them to prescribe 45 days, there's some arbitrary language in there. ADUs, they're defining them, that there's proposals to define them differently, to clarify that something over a garage is internal. Today we saw some language, Theron was in the Legislative Policy Committee too, and we continued into the board meeting talking about this. There's a proposal that cities can't allow a parking stall for an internal ADU, and that we may have to require all zones to accept internal ADUs. I used the example with Representative White about Harvest Park and said, okay, so if this area wasn't designed to have an internal ADU and we don't have to require parking, will that have zero effect on you getting out of your neighborhood? So, you know, there's some really interesting things. There's also gonna be a lot of conversation about what fees and taxes cities are allowed to have, so that road fee's gonna rear its ugly head. I know we're all waiting for the lawsuit to settle this month or next month with Pleasant Grove, but it looks like the legislature's gonna take on road fees. I didn't know that was coming. I might have missed that. So this is gonna be a really big session with a lot of implications for cities. And more to come. So the first Legislative Policy Committee meeting is on Monday, and I would encourage us to cast our 4 votes that we have, and if we need to rearrange who are the voters so we can cast votes, then we should do that. But lots of legislative stuff. That's it.
Sounds like you're taking away the control of the city, I guess you might say. There's
That is
control of the
exactly,
state.
I shared
Isn't
today.
that wrong with the state Supreme Court?
Well, I said today, I shared it even with Theron, and said for a state that prides itself on conservative government, that delegates government authority down closest to the people, there is a whole lot of overreach right now. So this session's a little tricky, and also, you know, there's a lot of these issues that if you really follow the money, you know exactly what's going on, and I'm very concerned about what's motivating some of these conversations that isn't being discussed. So, or that isn't being discussed publicly, rather. So, stuff to watch, guys. This one's a tough one.
Well, keep up the good work. Sounds exhausting.
It's kind of, yeah, it's a tricky one.
Shoot. All right, we'll see how it turns out. Okay, Casey?
Yeah, so last Thursday was the NYCC's end of the year banquet, and me and Logan were able to go, and it was real good to give plaques to all the advisors and to give a plaque and a basket to Joanne. She's been with NYCC for a long time, so we're really going to miss her, but she's done a great job there, and it was just a fun event. Everyone was tickled and loved all the activities that they had and fun treats and plaques and everything.
Casey, I think our MICC bylaws say the chair has to have a child who is actively enrolled. If you have a great volunteer who has continued interest in serving, such as, for example, Joanne, would we not want to consider revising that minor thing to allow for a qualified volunteer to participate?
You know,
Is that why she's not doing it any longer?
Well, she was also running for school board
She
but didn't get elected, so now she's probably has more time on her hands. But
Is she
who is already the new, isn't there already a new one appointed?
Yeah, it's Sarah Winward. Yeah.
Winward.
But she could help, right?
I think if there is not other interest to take that role, then by all means, it makes sense to make a logical adjustment to that. But if there's other people that are interested in waiting and eager to do it, I think it makes sense to.
I'll look at those bylaws.
Yeah,
Let
I
me
just
look
want
and
to
see
see
what
what
they
the
say.
language says. Can someone volunteer in that, whether they're the chair or a vice chair, whatever, advisor? I don't know what our language is. That's why I ask.
Yeah,
is
let me look at that.
You'd hate to lose someone who's
Willing.
Joanne and Natalie and others have said that they're planning on mentoring the new advisors. And it actually was kind of fun to see these new advisors last week, and they hadn't been involved with NYCC at all. And so this will be their first time at it, and Sarah's a good person to kind of help them with it. So I'm excited to see what happens. And Logan's going to be the liaison, so he'll be at each of the meetings or the monthly meetings that they have. So some good things will happen in this year, I think.
Great.
Good experience today.
Yeah, and I was going to also mention, yeah, so Joanne said that they had 5 kids and 2 leaders today, and she said that there was a mock debate, and the kids were able to, there was a topic of cell phones in schools, and they had that, arguments back and forth with it, and then some an activity relevant to city planning, and then a meeting with First Lady Abby Cox. So they said it was a real good event today.
They didn't mention Governor Cox's speech in that review?
Joanne didn't mention it, at least.
It was a great day. I thought it was really good. It was really cool to see him up there.
Awesome. I was bummed I was out of town. That'd been a good one to go to.
Representative White sat at our table and interacted with all of our youth too, so.
Oh, that's cool. He's good to do that. Thanks, Casey. All right, Leslie.
No report.
Aaron.
I don't really have anything either.
All right. Sounds good, Camille. All right, Corey, give us your.
You got my emails in regards to our retreat, so we got that scheduled for the February 16th. We're looking at Harvest Park. Unless you feel otherwise, we'll stay local this year. If you have another spot that you think would be good, you've seen our settings before, then let us know. And we're going to move that to 9 o'clock to 3:30. I'll send you an email here in the next week. And if you could email me with topics and let me know what you'd like to discuss. I will send an email out tomorrow with the topics we've come up with, and then you can add to those or say, hey, delete that one or what, so just let us know what your thoughts are. And then we're tentatively looking at the State of the City address for February 9th, and I'll keep you posted on that as we get a few more meetings with Dallas and Madison on that. So that's all I had.
Great. Thanks, Corey. All right. With that, I think.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, we have a motion.
Second.
That-
A motion by Councilmember Jones, a second by Councilman Garrett. All in favor?
Yes.
Garrett, yes.
Will you add that to the topic of discussion at the retreat? I'm just
yes. We could debate that all day.
Yeah. Yeah, put that on the topic list. How do we close the final motion?
What's the word? Is it aye or yes?
So besides the game, how was the rest of the?
It was incredible.